Alexandria, hello.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. I'm really, really excited. You're one of these people where I watch your Instagram. I don't watch that many Instagram stories, but yours is one of those ones that I do actually watch. So
Thank
it's
you.
like, when you feel like you know someone a little bit.
I love that. We can be pals. I'm here for this.
You're,
This is great.
you're
I'm
my
so here for
type.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I got to admit though, like I pretty much watch everyone's Instagram stories, which is quite impressive. Only because since I've had a baby now, I have so much time often one-handed. So I can't like respond to things, but I can like low-key stalk people. So I'm
Yes.
finally, even one of my friends said recently, she was like, you never used to watch my stories, and now I see you watch it all the time. I was like, they're watching everyone's stories at the moment. I'm on it.
I love that. Do you know what it reminds me of as well is just whilst we're here, this is going to apply to like many people that are listening, is when people say like, oh, they watched my story, but they didn't text back. And I'm like, yeah, that's because we watch stories just to numb out, not because we're like literally watching the story and interested. I
Yeah,
am
and
interested.
I'm so glad that you said that though, because like I've definitely, am I allowed to swear by the way? I should have asked
Yeah,
you
of
this before.
course.
Okay, cool. I've gotten shit before for like a similar thing. But for me, if I'm like going to respond to someone's message, I really take the time to like fully, deeply respond. Like I'm like not doing it in front of the TV. I'm not distracted. I like sit there and I will like properly respond to someone. So it's not, it's like a totally different energy to just kind of like you say, just like numbing out a little bit and like scrolling through versus like actually sitting and taking the time to like think about what someone said and respond fully to them.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. And I think that's just a great message for a podcast that's lessons in attachment. Will you just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Alexandria. I am all things business strategy, but also energetics, manifestation. I really love helping women through the kind of metamorphosis in their life. So when they're going through that next evolution and they're really like stepping into owning their desires. So that could be in business, it could be in their life. That's what really lights me up. And just helping women, I always joke, manifest a reality better than their vision board, but that really is like the goal of it. Like beyond what you could even comprehend was possible. I want to support you to make that happen.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons I really wanted you on the podcast is because I really believe so when it comes to working through relationship difficulties, those kind of reoccurring patterns and things like that. Certainly, one of the things that helped me like an awful lot was actually starting to tune into like another way of living. And that really looked at what are my dreams? Like what's outside of the life I've been living, basically. And so, because I think there's a certain path we can just go down when we just follow that sort of autopilot, everyday beliefs, and especially if we think everything is just finding the relationship. So I knew that in order to step out of that, I was going to have to rediscover myself, but also just go bigger. And I feel
Mm.
like you're just an ideal person to kind of talk about creating that.
Yeah, I love the go bigger energy. I'm so here for it.
Yeah. So before we dive into that, as much as you want to share, can you tell us a little bit about your love story?
Yeah, this question really made me giggle because I think it's quite a funny love story. So yeah, going way back, I finished university and didn't know what I wanted to do with myself. Hadn't really thought beyond actually getting a degree, and kind of got my degree and was like, okay, well, what do I do now? This is interesting. And for lack of a better direction, I thought, right, I'll go get a business master's that will like help me go into business. Like it was so vague. I literally had no idea what I wanted to do. And I thought like the more that I like studied, the more clear I would get, which now I look back and I'm like, that was never going to work for you. But anyway, so I got to the end of this business masters. I did it in Australia. The term times are different in Australia. You finish, I think I graduated in like the February or something, but basically it was like completely out of whack with where you would graduate in the UK from a course. Um, So I wanted to move to London. I'm from Manchester originally, and I decided, for lack of a better option, nothing had become clear still. I was going to be an insurance broker because I had friends who were insurance brokers, and I saw them getting drunk, going for lunch, doing a little bit of work, and getting pretty well paid. And I was like, I can do this. Like, this is going to be okay. I can do this. So I promise this is going to the love story. This is just the background to why I ended up in the situation I ended up in. So I'm trying to apply for graduate schemes. None of them are open because they're like, no, like they go with the year that you graduate. So I had to wait for the next round to open. And in the meantime, I'm trying to apply for jobs in London. And everyone's like, yeah, cool. Have you got 2 years experience and all the rest of it? And I'm like, absolutely not. Like, I'm fresh out of uni. Like, I don't have anything. I had some bits of work experience, but nothing substantial. So I basically ended up managing to get work experience at an accountancy firm, and the area of the accountancy firm did mergers and acquisitions in insurance companies. It was so tenuous, and I was like, I will take it. And it wasn't even paid. They were like, you can come in and we won't pay you and work for us for a week. And I was like, I will take it. So I went and stayed with my uncle, like went and did my work experience, managed to, anyway, yeah, going into the love story part. Day one of my work experience, I walk in and they've assigned this guy called Jake to look after me. And I'm like, I'm kind of into Jake. Jake's kind of hot. So I'm like texting my friends, like, guys, I fancy my boss. And they're like, Alex, this is wildly inappropriate. Like, I know you've just entered the corporate world, but you cannot be fancying your boss. And I'm like, he's a dish. Like, I'm here for it. So day one, I'm like, I really fancy my boss. And he was like, he was kind of flirting with me in this really weird way. He'd like email me things. And then like after work, he'd like switch from his work email to his personal email. It was, I look back now and I'm like, that's so weird. But like, anyway, he was like flirting with me over email. Um, and by the second week, I was hooking up with my boss, but he did turn into my husband, so it all worked out. But it was hilarious because I ended up getting a paid role at that company, and the floor that I was working on, his mum worked on, and then he was working on another floor, and I was like, this is just, you can't write this. Like, we're all in this office together, my boyfriend, his mum, my boss.
So it's through work.
Through work, yeah. I was the work experience girl, so they used to call me the WEG.
And you had no idea that day things were about to change?
No, do you know what? Like, I actually was in, I swear this is often the way. I was in like my sassy single girl era because I wasn't long out of a relationship that was so, just like tumultuous. I don't know how to say that word, but tumultuous. Like, it was
I
just,
know the one.
it was a shit show. I just got out of this shit show and I was like, oh my, when you just have those moments and it's like an instant upgrade and you're like, why have I been putting up with this shit? I'm not doing this anymore. Like, I have so much to give to the world. Like, I am not doing this anymore. And I'd had one of those moments. And then I was like, I'm in my sassy single girl era. I am living my best life. I truly was. And then, as is often the way, like, ended up meeting my husband not long after.
It actually is often the way, isn't it?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, can I ask, because I know that one of the things that certainly you seem really, really passionate about, and it's probably one of the reasons I'm really attracted to like watching your stories and following you and all your podcasts and everything, which I'll link to everything, by the way, is that I know that you're particularly focused on helping people, like you said, like businesses, other areas of their lives, all of those things. What is it about that that feels so important to you? Because I know that you care about the person. So why is
Mhm.
that so important, do you feel?
I feel like the biggest origin story to that is having experienced it myself and recognizing how bleak a place it can be to genuinely not like your life and not look forward to getting up in the morning. So if I kind of fast forward that story, I got my job in the insurance company. I was an insurance broker. I was doing well. 2 years in, I had a massive nervous breakdown and was like, got signed off work, couldn't go into work. And it was a real wake-up call to how miserable I was and how I'd built life based on what I should be doing or what other people thought I should do. And having had that experience, like the thought of anyone else ever going through that broke my heart. And I was like, I can't, if I can just like help one person not experience this, like that is worth something. And then from there, it just grew and grew. It was like, okay, well, how do I help people do this? How do I help them create avenues that support them to actually get out of these situations? Like, how can I support that individual to create a life that genuinely they're excited to live, that lights them up, that brings out the best in them? So yeah, I think it really stemmed from there. It was the actual experience of it myself. And I was like, oh no, like we should not be feeling this.
There's like more to life.
100%.
Yeah. And I think it's a funny one because thinking about the people that listen to this podcast who, certainly I can only really speak to the ones that I've spoken to that reach out, and those, you kind of form relationships with people, don't you?
Yeah.
And they're just incredible beings, right? And that includes those of you that I've not had those conversations with, because they're here listening to this. So we know that you're already on that journey in some way. So
Mm,
it's not like you're just completely on autopilot outside of this podcast. Something must be happening, right?
hmm.
However, I would be inclined to say that many people listening to this probably do relate to um, that phase that you just mentioned then of, yeah, perhaps not feeling your happiest. Probably, if you're listening to Lessons in Attachment, going through some kind of awakening. I've had enough. I just want to feel enough. Do you remember? Obviously, you remember the moment, but do you kind of remember the first things that you started doing, looking at, exploring?
Yeah, so clearly. The first thing I did was lie in a room for about a week. Literally just like, what is going on? The reason I share that is because like, just if anyone does really hit a total rock bottom, like don't expect to instantly start to pick yourself up and save yourself. Like it's okay to just lie there for a while and be like, what the fuck is happening? Like, why is this happening? So I definitely had that patch where I was like, okay. And then there's a quote, it's actually from oh, what's it called? P.S. I Love You. And I think it's in the book. And if not, then it's in the film. But her mum says to her at one point, she says, you can't fall off the floor. If someone throws you a rope, you got to stop climbing. And I really had that moment of like, it literally doesn't get worse than this. Like I'm at rock bottom. I've got to start doing something, anything to just try and like work out the pathway out of it. And I didn't have a clear path. I was like, I need to find the path. Like, I just need to start doing something. So, a couple of the things were one of them, which sounds unrelated, but actually makes so much sense, particularly from a manifestation perspective, was I cleared out my entire house. So I went through every part of my house and I was like, if this is not in alignment with who I want to be, if this doesn't light me up, I'd read Marie Kondo, I was like, if this doesn't bring me joy, it has no place in my life. And that was so
Like that.
symbolic. Yeah, because it cleared so much energetically for me. It created so much space. It created that vacuum for new stuff to come in. But it was almost like my line in the sand as well of being like, it starts here, it starts at home. Like if I'm accepting things into my environment, into my home that aren't in alignment with who I want to be and the life I want to live, that is so representative of the bigger picture. So like I started there, and from there, things just like became clearer and clearer. I was like, oh, this doesn't feel good. This isn't supporting me. Like I could really start to tune into myself more and more. So that was one of the big ones. And then I think the other big one was just following the breadcrumbs. I think when we are, I want to say when we're younger, but it's not always the case. I think do we go through periods of our life where we're a little bit more open to just exploring and seeing where we end up, like following the fun, following the breadcrumbs. And I think for me, anyway, as I got older, I became less inclined to do that. I wanted to know what the result was going to be. It was very like masculine energy. It was like, I want to know what this action is going to take me towards. I want to know the end result. Like it was very like, da, 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 da. And actually just letting that drop for a bit and being like, it's okay if this doesn't end up being the thing. If it feels good and I want to explore it, let's go explore it. Let's see what ends up happening. And sometimes it was a complete dead end. Sometimes there was a conversation that would happen and I'll be like, oh, that conversation sparked something. One of those things I did spark the original idea for my first business, which sent me down this whole other pathway. So just opening up to exploration and then following those breadcrumbs rather than being totally goal oriented and thinking this needs to take me somewhere or I need to end up in this place.
That speaks to, it's really interesting because it's making me think of certain parts of my journey. And actually, for
Mm,
me, the early part as well was figuring out what I enjoy and just what lights
mm,
me up. I don't, I might have done the clearing in a not so obvious way, I can
yeah.
imagine. But it was very much, I remember, and it will always come up now. It was things like going to coffee shops, spin classes, and being by water, things like that are things that I'd always enjoyed, but I'd never known that was a genuine feeling of joy that I need to be feeling more of. And
Yeah.
then that kind of helped me adopt that just in everyday life. Like, okay, so that's what joy feels like, or contentment, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then what was the second thing you said? Oh yeah. So I used to have a course, my membership had a different name, and it was Follow Your Fire. And it was
Mm,
exactly that. It was just that idea of just follow what it is that lights you up.
yeah.
And so, and a lot of the time at the moment, I think when you're just kind of facing or in the middle of the attachment and relationship difficulties, everything is on another person, everything's on relationship or avoiding or protecting yourself, whatever it is. And just that moment of like, what do I enjoy?
Mm.
You know? It's a quite a simple question, but I suppose we don't all know.
No, I think we get into patterns as well of just like living the way that we've been living. And yeah, I think it's a simple question. I think it's so powerful though. It's like, when was the last time you actually asked yourself? And I think it's important to say as well, it's something you have to keep asking yourself. Like, I definitely feel like I'm in a metamorphosis myself at the moment. I'm going through my next like evolution, whatever word you want to put on it. And it comes back to questions like that. It's like, okay, which parts are bringing me joy? Which parts aren't bringing me joy? Which parts are like fueling me, like feeling good? And like, how can I follow the joy more and let go and release some of those parts that I maybe was clinging on to for a multitude of reasons that I don't need to anymore?
So how, like, we were talking about like living a bigger life and things like that, and sort of people being quite limitless and just creating a, let's say, like a brand new life from how it looks now to where they want to be 3, 5 years from now, maybe even one. How how much do you believe people are capable of that's different from their lives right now?
I think they're capable of more than they know, but I think they have to be willing to take action and willing to be uncomfortable. And I think that's where it sometimes falters, because it's not a case of creating a vision board and writing your goals and dreaming big and all the rest of it and then sitting there and being like, cool, well, can't wait for something to happen in my life. It's like, okay, well, I've got these now. What's an action step I can take towards it? And I think this is bringing the manifestation piece, where manifestation often gets quite twisted, because people hear about the law of attraction and they're like, oh, I'm on the vibration of my desires. And it's like, yeah, that's great. But there's also the universal law of action, which we need to engage with, which is like actually taking action steps. I gave an example, which maybe would be appropriate for this podcast, but I said it was like you're like texting this guy and he's like, yeah, I'm really into you. Yeah, you're amazing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But like, he's never actually asking you to go on a date. Like, he never actually like takes you out on a date, and like actually you never end up going anywhere. He's just like selling you the dream, you know? And I think sometimes people do the same thing with their own dreams. They're like selling themselves the dream, but they're never actually like going and putting themselves out there or taking any action towards it.
Mm. How big does that first bit of action need to be, do you think?
I'm a big believer it can be small, and like I think there's a multitude of things that you can bring in here as well, because I do think, from a kind of trauma enforced perspective as well, you've got a window of tolerance. So like thinking about what's within your window of tolerance, like, it's going to be unique to each person, but really just the way that confidence is built in my eyes is you build it, you don't find it. People talk about finding their confidence. I don't think you ever find it. It's not something that you like search out for. It's something that you build, and you build those through the micro actions, and those micro actions compound. So I think it can be small. You can start small, But then comes in the other thing that I think is super sexy, which no one else does, which is consistency. Because everyone wants the quantum leap. I love working with quantum leaps. Like I've experienced my own, I've helped clients with theirs, and you still want the consistency. Often it's the compounding of the consistency which leads to these huge moments. So I think they can be small, but if they're small, they just need to be consistent.
Okay. And so, because you started talking about manifesting, can we manifest love?
I feel like this is more a question for you, but I definitely think we can. I 100% think we can.
Do you?
Yeah.
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 I,
And
yeah, I mean, I could look at my experience and be like, I manifested that. But
mm,
also there's other elements where I'm like, I was ready for that and it was what I started saying no to. But whichever way it goes down, I can tell you that a lot of the relationship I'm in now matches what I was manifesting, even in like quite a strange way, some of it.
I think when we like strip manifestation down to like what it is like, okay, thoughts, feelings, beliefs, energy in alignment with what we desire. Actually, so much of that, it's not just kind of like the spiritual side. There's so much neuroscience behind it as well. So I think it makes sense in terms of, even when you were saying like, oh, what I was a no to me, that is like the energetics of manifestation. That's like putting it out there. No, like these are my new standards. These are my boundaries that I'm setting. And like being open to it again is like, to me, such a huge part of manifestation, because like, how can you receive something if every time someone's trying to give you something, you're like batting it away, and you're like, no, I don't want that. Like, so I think when you broaden the perspective of like what manifestation incorporates, like you can see how actually that prepares you for the love that you receive.
Yeah, amazing. And you know those moments where whether it's your clients or whether it's yourself, um, where you're just like, this is pointless, nothing works, and I might as well give up. How
Mm-hmm.
do you kind of navigate through that?
I think first of all, let yourself feel it. I don't think we should ever try and switch into positivity or like, just kind of brush over how we're feeling instantly. I think it's so important to honor those feelings that are coming up for us and take some time to do that. Um, but I always have this image in my head, and someone else shared it with me. So it didn't come from me originally, but they said there was this cartoon that they always envisioned. And in the cartoon, there's two people digging for gold. And one person is like, it's not working, I give up, kind of puts the spade down. And the other person, and the other person keeps digging, but this person who's given up was one dig away from finding the gold. And I always try and remember that in my own life and share of a similar value with my clients, that sometimes like the moments we're just about to give up is the moment just before everything takes off. And often it's again the consistency that actually suddenly you look back and you're like, oh my God, not only have I achieved what I wanted to achieve, I've achieved way beyond that. But I think moments of it's not working and wanting to give up are normal. I don't think there's anything, you're not like pushing away your manifestations. I think when it becomes an issue is when you then sit in it, because it has an impact which hits into other things then. Because if you're sat there thinking, well, none of this is working, you're not going to be taking any action towards it.
Mm,
So I think everything starts to feed each other.
and brings us back round to action again, right?
Yeah.
I honestly, I didn't know exactly like the way that this conversation was going to go, but there's just so many like really crucial points that actually we could relate to business, we could relate to relationships. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's so interesting. And something that I'm really curious about is because of the fact I really love this idea that you have taken action to get to where you are. You're not saying like, I did the vision board and now here I am and I can make you do that in one day as well. I really love that. And I
Mm.
think I can hear you mentioned it being trauma informed, and I can really hear that. And I really appreciate that on this podcast, especially. So I hope that people understand that just what they are capable of,
Mhm.
even with the experiences or where they are right now. And for you, do you have, I guess, like any habits, tools that for you personally, that when you drop them, that you do see perhaps old habits or self-doubt come back and things like that. Do you have anything, and I know it'll be different for everyone, but for you, just out of curiosity, that's like non-negotiable? I know your whole life has like taken a drastic kind of change
Yeah.
recently. Haven't you?
Yeah, so I have a 4-month-old baby. So I look back at previous me who used to do my like 90-minute morning routine and I'm like, oh, how lovely. How nice for you. Um, but I think the best way to answer this is I think it depends what stage you're in and where you're at. And what I mean by that is it's never the tools themselves that are the things creating your success. It's the way the tools shift things for you that help you create success. So when you can start to actually embody what you're working towards, it's less about the tools and you're just a walking embodiment of the tools you were using. So there's like big periods in my life where I can see like, yes, I needed to do my embodied visualizations, my affirmations. I needed to do my journaling. I needed to do my future scripting. Like I had to do all those things to really prime myself for going into the day and prime my energy. But after a while, I set a new baseline and it was like that was embodied, that was already there. But that's not to say, oh, I nailed everything and now I never do anything again. It just depends what I'm moving through at the time. So, as I said, like I'm on the brink of another metamorphosis, another evolution. And with that, I'm going back to those tools and being like, right, okay, where are the limiting beliefs lying? What is the stuff that I need to clear? What is the stuff that I need to embody now to really step into this next evolution? Like, and those practices become very sacred again. So I don't think there's anything that's like, oh, if I drop that, everything goes to shit. And I also think, you know, for the very busy people, the mums, whoever it may be, like I think there's other ways of doing things as well that can work for you. So like I don't sit and meditate the way that I used to, but I'm currently breastfeeding, so like I have a real dropped in moment with my son in those moments that I'm deeply present and so tapped into like source love and just like feeling so expansive in those ways. And then I can take that energy into other things. I don't think it has to look like one way or one thing.
Yes, when I was it a stress group I used to deliver? I can't remember. I think it was stress maybe. And we would talk about, actually, it might have been the perinatal group, actually.
Mm.
I think it was. And we were talking about not having to take the time out, but bringing the tool in exactly like you just described. And I think it's so powerful. And just to hear you to say that, because it's so easy for you to say, I don't have the time now. And it's just not
Oh,
saying.
so easy to say I don't have the time. Like my respect for mums has gone up like 50-fold because like I was like, it's fine. I always respected them and always listened and heard that. And I think I thought you could find more time than you could find. And now I'm like, oh no,
Get
I
it.
see. I see.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's a great way of you've put it so like beautifully there, like bringing the tools in rather than like trying to add extra things in.
Yeah, exactly. There was something else I know that I really wanted to ask, but it's just gone from my mind. Um, no. But honestly, just I can't tell you like how powerful some of this information is, and I just really hope that it just inspires people to show up in their day to day a little bit different, because I think that's one of the things that's really reminding me of is that's what I had to do is I had to change the day to day and just really commit to it. And it sounds like you are committed to just like a bigger picture for yourself.
Yeah, I think that's a huge part of it. Um, Setting the standards and remembering to tap back into that as well. I think you can lose sight of it and then you have to kind of like come back to it and we also change as well. I know this is speaks about relationships a lot. Maybe you've had one vision and then you meet someone and the vision shifts again. So like really just tapping back in and checking like, is this still in alignment for me? Is this what I want? Like, I think your version of bigger can shift depending on what's going on, but just like always reminding yourself that you are worthy and capable of living exactly the life that you want to live.
Yeah, and that reminded me as well as what it was that just came up for me. And it was that idea of quite a few people will report that once they are dating or in relationship, they will start to get re-triggered around things that they thought they had worked on. And
Mm.
actually, what I kind of hear you saying is, yeah, like things come up and we can tap back into that and tap back into what we know and explore that. And it's just like you just said it so naturally, it's almost just like normalizing it that, yeah, things come back up.
Yeah, and I think you were so right earlier when you said like these lessons go across relationships and business. And this is why even when I focus with women on business, it's really a portal for so much to look at so many other things, because I think the same rules do apply here. And, you know, from a business perspective, people get triggered in their business and it's like, okay, well, what is there to look at here? You know, things like codependency show up with client relationships. Like there's all these different things that show up. And instead of it being a bad thing, like it's like, oh, amazing. Like I've got this opportunity to dive deeper here. I've got this opportunity to do a greater level of healing. And I love, there's a Danielle Laporte book, which is all about the heart. I can't remember what it's called now. Brilliant book anyway. Um, and she talks about this where things like reappear for you. And I really loved her perspective on it, because she was saying like, when it comes back up, it's not that you've gone backwards. It's not that you've like going, you know, you're going backwards in terms of your journey. You're always moving forwards, that you're showing up to the same problem, but as a different version of yourself. And because you're this different version of yourself, you get the opportunity to face this situation as this next evolution of yourself, as this version of yourself with the tools that you now have. And I thought it was a really beautiful way of looking at it, because I think one of the triggers can be, I thought I'd healed this. I thought I was over this. I thought we'd done the work here. Why is this showing up for me again? And it's like, oh, cool. Okay, well, I get to show myself how much I've grown in this area. And I also get to do a deeper level of healing here. Like, that's such an incredible opportunity.
That's such an important message. There was a soundbite in there. As you were saying it, I was like, I can hear that. I'm definitely pulling that out. So good. Yeah, no, because it's such valuable information. It really is that we're not going backwards. And we beat ourselves up so much, right? When you see yourself getting re-triggered. I have three questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
So the first is, what does love mean to you, and how has, if it's changed, how has it changed?
Love to me is, I think in its purest sense, like we are love and the vibration of love. And there's moments where we can tap into that feeling of just like complete oneness. I think like oneness is really like the core of it. That we so easily become detached from, just living our day-to-day life, and you know, the news pitting us against each other and all these things. So I think at the core of it, it's oneness. And in a more day-to-day sense, I think I've realized that love is a deep acceptance, and I think that's something that's changed. I think I used to think people had to be the same as me in order to love them or to be lovable. And now I recognize that actually love is loving and honoring someone as they are and where they're at, and allowing others to love me for who I am, where I am, and where I'm at as well.
So nice. In terms of just thinking of people listening to the podcast, the idea of oneness, like, is something that they're consistently a lot of the time disconnected from. And so this is not an easy thing to do because there's often not language. How would you describe oneness? What is it, that kind of feeling for someone who is yet to feel it?
I think the feeling of oneness is like looking beyond the human level and almost meeting everyone at a soul level, and reconnecting to that feeling of us all being worthy of love. And it's probably a very like topical example for me, but like if you look at a baby, you just see that baby as like being so lovable and like so worthy of love. And then as we get older, we put all these conditions on it. And it's like almost coming back to seeing everyone as babies. I think that's probably the most like practical example of it that I could give, which is just like walking around and seeing everyone as these delicious, beautiful little babies that are so worthy of our love. Um, and then I think in a more kind of like spiritual sense, it's, for me, it's often after experiences like breath work and things like that, where I can just feel this vibration of like we are all equal, we are all lovable, like we are all here for our own divine purpose, and we are all interconnected. It's just such a like powerful, gorgeous feeling.
I'm so glad I asked that follow-up question. In terms of love, it can be the most amazing thing and it can be the most painful. How do you navigate your life, your business when love throws you off?
I think this is something I've definitely got better at. And I think it's recognizing that I can still be deeply present in the experience I'm in, even if there is something else going on for me at the time. And I can hold the duality of both of it. Like one of the biggest examples of this for me was, sounds random, but my dog was literally my child before my child came. And he went missing last year. So the place that was meant to be looking after him lost him. So we were like searching for him for 3 days. And it was this real experience of this like deep heartbreak, deep grief. And could I still find gratitude and appreciation for the small moments and the small things that were happening? So I remember really clearly like walking down this road in the Florida heat. We're trying to find a dog and like heartbroken. And I'm noticing how beautiful the nature is around me and like the sound of the birds tweeting and all these things. So taking that to back to kind of like, how do you navigate other things? I can recognize like I can have this going on in one area of my life and I can still be deeply present in the experience that I'm in that moment. So I don't have to carry that energy over, whilst also honoring I need to go and take time to be with whatever's coming up. And what that often looks like for me is actually, in terms of like love throwing me off, like a big thing has been admitting what I actually want, like what my real desire is, rather than reactive behaviors. Because I think I was definitely someone who would expect someone to read my mind or push them away, rather than being like really vulnerable and really honest and being like, do you know what, like this is how I'm feeling, this is what I'm really deeply desiring from you, can you meet me in that?
Mm. Do you know what, as well, just the example of these two experiences being able to coexist, I truly believe that's one of the my biggest lessons as well. And even
Mm.
now, that is just, I mean, it's not an example like you gave in terms of sort of that deep emotion, but like wanting to go to the gym and not wanting to go to the gym, you know, being able to hold that difference without beating myself up and thinking it's all terrible. But like,
Mm.
it's the example that you gave is so, like, I can't even really think of a word of it, but just so useful, when I know that many of the people that you're talking to that are listening to your message right now are stuck on someone and they can't see another way,
Mm.
you know? So
I
that's so powerful.
Something I always remember with that, when like you can't see another way, is like, firstly, just like being open to other possibilities, like going into every day with the intention of, I am open to seeing other possibilities. And maybe in like a relationship example, that looks like you start to like notice the hot guy or the hot girl, and you're like, oh, like there's other like, and then you like might notice like someone's like looking at you and you're like, oh, like I still got it. Like, you just like open yourself up to the possibilities and you start picking up on those. And like in a broader sense, I love there's like a lecture from Louise Hay that I listened to once, and she talks about there's possibilities that exist that we can't even comprehend yet. So like remembering that we are so limited in the possibilities and the potentials that we can hold. Because like if you went back, say you went back 500 years ago and you're like, we're going to hold these like blocks around in our hands and you can speak to anyone in the world and you can like read things on them or take photos, they would be like, I can't even comprehend this. Like this is beyond the level of comprehension I have. And yet the possibility existed even then, even though it didn't exist in reality. So like even when we can't, even if we can't get a grasp on what that is, just knowing that there are possibilities that exist that we haven't even got our heads around yet always reminds me that there's so much more possible than what we're seeing in the immediate.
Absolutely. And for anyone thinking, yeah, but that's not the case for me, it includes everyone listening
Yes.
and beyond.
Going back to oneness, it
Yeah,
includes you.
exactly. Okay, that oneness. I don't use the word oneness. I think that's why I asked you a bit more about it, but I'm feeling the way that you've described it, so I might have to look into that, kind of adopt that word a bit more. And you get to go back to any age and give yourself a lesson in love. What age are you going back to for Alexandria, and what lesson would you give?
I'm going to be 20 years old and I'm going to tell myself to stop chasing fuckboys. Honestly, just like really just like love yourself a lot more, honor yourself a lot more, and know that you are worthy instead of trying to find your worthiness in other people.
Mm, that's a message we all need at that young age.
Oh my God, it would have saved me so many drunken texts and awkward situations.
Oh my God, it all just came flooding back. I just remembered it
I
all.
know. Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you so, so much. Honestly, I really do mean it. I'm sounding like a broken record, everyone, I know, but I genuinely didn't know the path this was going to go. And so valuable the way you deliver your message, the message that you've shared with us today, is beyond the world of possibility, right? Is beyond what I expected. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you for having me. Honestly, it's been such a joy to chat to you. And yeah, I love diving into love as well. I don't normally get to talk about love. So it's been great to tap into this energy. Thank you so much.
Where can people find you and come and share that love with you?
For sure. So I'm over on the Soul Yes podcast. So you can find that wherever you listen. And then I'm hanging out on Instagram, as you've heard, probably more than I should be at the moment. But I am Alexandria Maria on there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.